Chapter 1139. At the peak of Kunlun Mountain, the legendary Devil's Den was peaceful, and all the warriors were immersed in their cultivation. Of course, some warriors were unwilling to cultivate like this. However, the only path leading to Kunlun Mountain had been sealed, so they had no chance of descending the mountain. Chu Xiu led Feng Qinkong up Kunlun Mountain. He sighed as he looked at the familiar surroundings. Although he had only been in the Daluotian Mountain for a year, he felt as if a lifetime had passed. After all, this was the place where he had fought his way here. There were many people here that he could not let go of. Ever since he had arrived in the Daluotian Mountain, besides tracking down Dugu Weiwei's whereabouts, Chu Xiu had even placed cultivation as his second priority. The most important thing was to find the way back to the lower realm. When Chu Xiu walked to the peak of Kunlun Mountain, he immediately activated the formation. An angry roar came from the top of Kunlun Mountain. Who dares to trespass the sacred cult of Kunlun? Lu Jiang, he rushed out angrily. Ever since Wei Shuya had forced the North and South Buddhist sects to retreat, no one had come to the Kunlun devil cult to cause trouble. After all, even the North and South Buddhist sects had been defeated. If it had been anyone else, it would have been the same. Most importantly, in their opinion, after Chu Xiu's death, the Kunlun devil cult would be leaderless. The others were nothing to worry about. It was better to let them fend for themselves. When they had time, they would suppress and nibble away at them. There was no need to force them into a life-and-death struggle. Therefore, no one had come to cause trouble in the past year. However, the Kunlun devil cult still arranged for people to guard the door at all times. The person guarding the door now happened to be Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe, who came out in anger, suddenly saw Chu Xiu. His eyes widened like copper bells. After a while he spat out a word. F***ck. Chu Xiu said lightly, "Since we haven't seen each other for a year, I'll pretend that I didn't hear what you said. I'll give you a chance to say something else to welcome my return." Lu Jianghe shook his head and quickly said, "No, I mean, where have you been for the past year? I haven't heard of any war breaking out in any place, nor have any sects been massacred." Although Lu Jianghe was very confident in Chu Xiu, he was also someone who truly knew how powerful the eternal demon pill was. However, this time, it was just too dangerous. That was the power of heaven and earth between two worlds crushing over. And even the true spirit would be crushed. Any devil pills would be useless. Therefore, after a year, Lu Jianghe was no longer as confident as before. In the end, Chu Xiu appeared here unscathed, which gave Lu Jianghe a huge shock. In his opinion, if Chu Xiu needed to reconstruct his body like last time, then with his current strength, he couldn't just destroy the Sun and Lu families like last time. Now, it was more likely that Chu Xiu had destroyed a top sect of Buddhism or Taoism. As they spoke, the others also ran out from the interior of the Kunlun devil cult. After seeing Chu Xiu, everyone's faces were filled with shock, surprise, excitement, longing, and all sorts of other emotions. Chu Xiu glanced at the people present. Wei Shuya, Lu Fengxian, Mei Qinglian, Mu Zi, Luo Feiheng, Shang Tianliang, Chu Wuji, Tangya, and so on. He smiled and said, "I'm back." Those who were familiar with Chu Xiu were silent for a long time, while the other Kunlun devil cult martial artists cheered. The Kunlun devil cult with Chu Xiu and the Kunlun devil cult without Chu Xiu were two completely different concepts. For the past year, they had been trapped in the Kunlun devil cult. Other than training hard, they could only sit and watch others fight their way to their door. The old people who had followed Chu Xiu to roam the pugilistic world from the beginning were extremely sullen. As long as Heaven's will was not defeated, the demon master would not die. Chu Xiu might have been defeated before, but in their hearts, the current Chu Xiu was also an undying existence. After a long time, Wei Shuya smiled and said, Good. It's good that you're back." At this time, everyone seemed to notice Feng Qinkong, who was beside Chu Xiu. Lu Jianghe asked in surprise, "Who is this guy?" Chu Xiu said casually, "I picked him up on the side of the road." Feng Qinkong. Although he had picked him up on the side of the road, he couldn't just leave him here. After all, he had seen how Chu Xiu had returned from the Daluotian. Therefore, after Feng Qinkong joined the Kunlun devil cult, he couldn't wander around. At the very least, he had to stay in the Kunlun devil cult for a period of time. After everyone entered the main hall, there were only these people that Chu Xiu could trust left. Lu Jianghe then asked hurriedly, "Where have you been all this time? I saw the horror of the spatial collapse back then. How did you withstand it? Also, how many people did you kill to recover to this level of cultivation? Why haven't I heard of any large-scale deaths in the pugilistic world?" Lu Jianghe's mouth was as fast as Fang Qixiao's, and he spoke out all his doubts. Everyone present also had an inquisitive look on their faces. What Lu Jianghe asked was what they wanted to know. Chu Xiu let out a long sigh and said, "I went to another world." With that, Chu Xiu told everyone everything that happened after he entered the Daluotian world. He didn't hide anything. Of course, there was one thing that he didn't say, and that was about Dugu Weiwei. Although Chu Xiu knew that Dugu Weiwei wasn't dead, and he also knew the ending of what happened 500 years ago, there was still one thing that he didn't understand. That was, what was the relationship between him and Dugu Weiwei? Therefore, everything about Dugu Weiwei, Chu Xiu was prepared to keep it in his heart for the time being, and not tell anyone else. After Chu Xiu finished speaking, everyone present had a strange look on their faces. It took them a long time to digest all of this. These things were also very unbelievable to them. Those top sects left before the great ancient calamity, and found another world. Moreover, it was even more developed than in the great ancient times. They didn't even dare to guess such a thing in the past. Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "I knew that you're good at making trouble. No matter where you are, people like you will definitely make a name for themselves. It's just that the Imperial Sky Pavilion is pitiful. They thought they found someone they could use, but they didn't know what kind of existence they had pulled into their sect." When Mei Qinglian met Chu Xiu, he was still in the Guanzhong torture room. Come to think of it, none of those who had been Chu Xiu's boss in the past had a good ending. Of course, the hidden demon lineage didn't count because the hidden demon lineage didn't belong to Old Wei alone. However, nearly half of the big shots and powerhouses of the hidden demon lineage were killed by Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu said, "That's where you're wrong. After I came to the Imperial Sky Pavilion, I helped them quite a bit. If it wasn't for me, the southern barbaric land wouldn't be so stable." Lu Jianghe smiled and said, "First give a reward, then send you on your way. This is your style, great demon Lord Chu." Wei Shuya didn't join in the jokes between the young people. He suddenly said, "Can you still return to the Daluotian?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Of course I can go back. That place is where the two worlds intersect. The Daluotian side is already under my control, so I can come and go as I please." Opportunity. Good fortune. Wei Shuya suddenly spat out these 4 words. Everyone present didn't react, but Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's indeed an opportunity." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, he stretched out his hand, and a bit of devil chi bloomed in his hand. The devil chi swayed, but the power that bloomed in it was Chu Xiu's full power foundation. It even shook the void and created a little ripple. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I stayed in the Daluotian for nearly a year, but in this year, I really cultivated in seclusion for less than half a year. However, this is the power foundation that I accumulated in half a year." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present suddenly gasped. They were all very close to Chu Xiu, and they had all seen Chu Xiu fight before. Naturally, they knew how strong Chu Xiu's power foundation was. But now, Chu Xiu had only cultivated in seclusion for half a year, and he had already reached this level. One could imagine how strong the essence energy of heaven and earth in the Daluotian was. Keeping the devil chi, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "You can say that the essence energy of heaven and earth in the Daluotian is equivalent to a mystic realm like the lesser mortal world, or even stronger. There are some blessed lands in the Daluotian where the essence energy of heaven and earth is even stronger, but I haven't been there before. Just imagining it is enough. This time, I came back with the idea of bringing all of you to the Daluotian to cultivate." Just imagining it was enough for everyone present to guess what kind of scene it would be. This was simply a cultivation speed that was like cheating. Cultivating in the Daluotian, accumulating the realm, and then going to the lower realm to roam the world. At that time, who would be able to stop their Kunlun demon sect? Who could stop the rise of the demonic path? Perhaps they could really recreate the peak of the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago. Lu Jiang, he said excitedly. I realized that as long as you die once, you will definitely obtain an opportunity and benefit. If you die a few more times, you might be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the cult leader. However, just as Lu Jiang he finished speaking, he was glared at by Mei Qinglian and Mu Ziyi at the same time, and they rolled their eyes at him like knives. At this time, Chu Xiu had just returned. Couldn't they speak more auspiciously? Lu Jiang he shrunk his neck, and wisely did not continue speaking. There were not many women in the Kunlun devil cult, but they were the ones that should not be provoked. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "This is indeed an opportunity, but we still need to plan it well. First, whether it is the entrance to the Daluotian or the lower realm, they must all be under our control. In the Daluotian, I am the county governor of Kangwu County, and the barbarians see me as a god, so there is no problem for now. But the lower realm belongs to the Sabodhi monastery, and when I returned to the lower realm, I coincidentally encountered a few monks from the Sabodhi monastery, and I killed them. Also, the Sabodhi monastery actually joined forces with the Great Light Temple to seal our cult's rootless sacred fire. This debt should be settled." Chapter 1140. If you wanted to travel between the Daluotian and the mortal world, the entrance must be controlled by Chu Xiu. Therefore, the grudge between Chu Xiu and Sabodhi monastery had to be resolved sooner or later. Wei Shuya frowned and said, "So you're going to attack Sabodhi monastery? It's a little difficult. One is that Sabodhi monastery is not weak now, not to mention the divine monk Rama, the monk Bukong, who participated in the battle to destroy the holy sect 500 years ago, should have recovered his strength by now. It will be very difficult for the North and South Buddhist sects to join forces to destroy them. Also, the righteous path of martial arts will not let you deal with Sabodhi monastery." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "It's too late. Sabodhi monastery must be destroyed. First, the southern barbaric land must be in my hands. Second, I am now in the dark and they are in the light. No one knows that I am back. But if I drag it out for a while, I am afraid that the people of Sabodhi monastery will notice some clues." Lu Jiang he interrupted, "Don't worry, Kunlun Mountain has been sealed by us like an iron bucket during this time. No one can go out without our permission. No news will be leaked." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I'm not afraid of my own people leaking the news, but I'm afraid that Sabodhi monastery will figure it out. Don't forget that the Sabodhi monastery still has Xiaomo. His divination skills are not weak. It may be difficult for him to deduce me, but it is possible for him to deduce that I am related to those dead people. Therefore I have to strike first. Also, you don't have to worry about the righteous path. I want to destroy Sabodhi monastery. As long as I say that this is just to resolve a personal grudge, and I won't do anything after that, they will never interfere in this matter." Lu Jiang he curled his lips and said, "Are you so confident in your credibility?" Chu Xiu sneered and said, "It's not that I'm confident, but they have to believe me because they don't dare." Everyone present looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. After a trip to the Daluotian, Chu Xiu had become so arrogant? Although his current strength was no different from a heaven and earth mystic realm martial artist, there were still many experts in the lower realms. Chu Xiu pointed at himself and said, "Just because I'm here, they won't dare to continue meddling in this matter. The first time I was killed by that old monk from the Sabodhi monastery, I came back and killed the person who hit me when I was down. The second time, so many people saw me fall into the spatial crack. Everyone thought that I was torn into pieces by the spatial storm, but in the end I still came back. I was prepared to destroy the North and South Buddhist sects that hit us when we were down. Then when the third time comes, even if someone is certain that they can kill me, who can guarantee that I won't come back again? They only have one chance to kill me, and no one can be certain that I will return. Who would dare to do it again and again?" After hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present felt a chill run down their spine. They suddenly realized that Chu Xiu was now the most troublesome existence in the entire Jianghu, even more troublesome than Yi Xiaonan. If you killed him once, he could come back. If you killed him a second time, he could come back again. Every time he came back, he could cause a storm of blood. Would anyone dare to come a third time? They didn't believe in Chu Xiu, But if they didn't have absolute confidence that they could really kill Chu Xiu, they would never come a third time. Now Chu Xiu's status in the lower realms was even the same as the Daluotian Duguweiwei, to the point that no one dared to kill him. The phrase Demon Lord is immortal was suitable to describe the current Chu Xiu. Wei Shuya nodded and said, "If that's the case, how do you plan to attack Sabodhi Monastery first?" In the Daluotian era, Chu Xiu had no one he could trust. Everything he did was through threats, promises, and deceptions. Among his most useful subordinates, Ku Cha had been threatened, and He Jie and Green Jade had been deceived. It was only in the lower realms that Wei Shuya and the others would truly support Chu Xiu unconditionally. Even if Chu Xiu came up with a terrifying plan, they would carry it out. This feeling was much better than in the Daluotian era. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "No, don't attack Sabodhi Monastery first. Attack Great Light Temple first." Everyone was stunned. The passageway was at Sabodhi Monastery. Why would you attack Great Light Temple? Chu Xiu said, "Find a reasonable excuse. Since we said we want revenge, then we should attack together. Otherwise, we will arouse suspicion if we only attack Sabodhi Monastery. Also, the enemy is out in the open while we are in the dark. We only have one chance to attack, so we can only get rid of the weaker one first. Great Light Temple is undoubtedly easier to deal with than Sabodhi Monastery." Wei Shuya nodded and said, "When do we attack?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "Now. To prevent any accidents from happening, City Lord Shang, Elder Wei, and me, with the three of us, we will break through Great Light Temple's mountain gate. There is no need to kill, just exterminate the sect. After this, I will contact the Northern Yan royal family. There will be no more monks in the north." Shang Tianliang nodded and said, "That's great. I've been planting vegetables for a long time, and I want to find someone to stretch my muscles." Wei Shuya stood up and said, "Then let's go." South China, inside Sabodhi Monastery. Raimo sat in front of Xiao Mok and said, "Uncle Master Huida has not returned yet." Xiao Mok poured a cup of tea for Luo Mo and said, "Martial Uncle Huida brought 2 disciples to chase after Fang Qingkong. The main reason was to train the disciples. It shouldn't be too difficult. Right now, they should be bringing Fang Qingkong's head to see the survivors of the tribe that he destroyed." Although he was blind with his spiritual sense, he could feel that he could not see, and he was no different from a normal person. Raimo said in a low voice, "It is not difficult, but he has not returned. The survivors of the tribe have not seen them either. This is suspicious." Hearing Rama's words, Shalama frowned. He took out a string of Buddhist beads and tapped them lightly a few times. In an instant, mysterious Sanskrit words bloomed on the Buddhist beads, causing them to spin in the air. After a while, Xiao Mok's expression grew uglier. He let out a long sigh and said, "Uncle Master Huida is dead." Raimo's expression did not change at all, but his gaze became heavy. It was not that he was not sad, but most of the time, Raimo did not show his emotions on his face. This is troublesome. There are not many people who can kill Uncle Master Huida in the southern barbarian land. And there are not many who dare to kill him. Can you see who killed him? Raimo did not doubt the results of Xiao Mok's divination. For Xiao Mok, if he was asked to divine the secrets of the heavens, it might be too much. But now, it was very simple for him to divine the life and death of someone close to him. It would not be wrong. The Buddhist light in front of Xiao Mok grew brighter and brighter. The Buddhist beads in front of him also spun faster and faster. In the end, there was a soft sound and they broke. The Buddhist beads fell to the ground and made a crisp sound. Xiao Mok's face was slightly pale as he shook his head and said, "I can't divine it, but I can feel that the other party is very strong and has great karma with my Sabodhi monastery. Even the other party can affect the fate of the entire Buddhist lineage." Raimo looked up at the sky and shook his head. "Who is it? Is Elysium preparing to set foot in Jianghu? Or has Yi Xiaonan already refined the demonic seed? 1 year, it's only been 1 year. Ever since Chu Xiu's death, the entire Jianghu had only been peaceful for a year. But the tree longed for peace, but the wind would not stop. From the looks of it, there were still more storms waiting for them. Send someone to West Chu and inform the Celestial Master Mansion. Be careful of the moon-worshipping cult. Chu Xiu was already dead. Although the heavenly gate was powerful, it had no karma with their Sabodhi monastery. Therefore, the most suspicious person who could affect the fate of the entire Buddhist lineage and kill Uncle Master Huida was the moon-worshipping cult. Yi Xiaonan was strong enough. Moreover, East Emperor Tai, or the high priest of the moon-worshipping cult, could easily kill a monk of the Sabodhi monastery before they could figure out what was going on. This was all they could do. The Sabodhi monastery had gone in the wrong direction, but Chu Xiu and the others would not go down the wrong path of extermination. There was basically no risk of being exposed when two heaven and earth profound opening cultivators and Chu Xiu, who was comparable to a heaven and earth profound opening cultivator, went to the northern Yan. As long as they restrained their aura to the extreme, even if they passed through the crowd, no one would see them. Traveling all the way to the extreme north, Chu Xiu looked at the peak of the mountain where the Great Light Temple was located and suddenly sighed, saying, "Actually, although I have quite a deep grudge against the Great Light Temple, in reality, they have never really threatened my life many times." Shang Tianliang heard this and laughed. "What's wrong? You're showing mercy at the entrance of a monk's temple?" Chu Xiu shook his head. "No, I'm just lamenting the impermanence of the world. The people I want to kill the most are always at the back. However, they will die sooner or later. The Great Light Temple wants to slay demons, and I want to destroy Buddhism. Sooner or later, we will have to fight to the death." The three of them walked all the way to the foot of the mountain where the Great Light Temple was. However, there were no monks standing guard at the foot of the mountain. Looks like the Great Light Temple has been living very comfortably for the past year. They've even removed the people guarding the mountain gate. Chu Xiu chuckled. He led Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang up the mountain peak step by step. There were only two novice monks standing guard at the gate of the Great Light Temple. When they saw Chu Xiu and the others walk up, one of the novice monks even walked up to them. He put his palms together and bowed. "May I ask which sect you three are from? What business do you have with the Great Light Temple?" There was a gentle smile on Chu Xiu's face as he said to the novice monk, "I'll have to trouble you to go in and send a message. I'm Chu Xiu from Kunlun. I'm here to destroy your Great Light Temple." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the aura that the three of them had been hiding all along the way was instantly released. In an instant, demonic aura shot into the sky. Boundless dark clouds shrouded the entire Great Light Temple. Chilly winds howled and demonic aura howled. The pure land of Buddhism was like a ghost town. Chapter 1141. The moment Chu Xiu and the other two revealed their aura, the people of the Great Light Temple had already noticed it. Everyone suddenly opened their eyes, but there was still a look of disbelief in their eyes. The entire Jianghu had been peaceful for a year. Although it had only been a year, they could not help but relax. In the entire Great Light Temple, no one would have thought that there would be a demonic path martial artist who would be bold enough to display his aura in front of the Great Light Temple. At the door, Chu Xiu's hand was already on the breaking matrix. The aura of the three was too strong. When combined, it even stimulated the Great Light Temple's matrix to start operating, and the entire Great Light Temple was shrouded in a Buddhist light. The saber was unsheathed, tainted by demonic energy, and swept across. The misty slash and the saber will of the breaking formula were perfectly fused together. Chu Xiu closed his eyes slightly, but his mind was reverberating with the remarkable power that he had seen and listened to the spring rain. The clouds parted, the moon shone, and the sky shone. Chu Xiu only thought about that terrifyingly powerful remarkable power for a moment, and did not even borrow the slightest bit of its aura. It was not that Chu Xiu did not want to, but he did not dare to. The power of the law embodiment of heaven and earth was already strong enough, and Dugu Weiwei's remarkable power was even stronger, to the extent that Chu Xiu did not dare to try it at all. Chu Xiu could not even withstand the consumption of the law embodiment of heaven and earth, let alone this remarkable power. But even so, Chu Xiu's saber had displayed the pinnacle of his power and sharpness to the fullest. The powerful saber aura swept through the world, and the surrounding snow-capped mountains let out a roar. 10 miles of avalanche. The saber aura pierced through the gates of the Great Light Temple, and the matrix emitted a blinding light, resisting the power of Chu Xiu's saber. The Great Light Temple's legacy matrix was not weak, but when faced with Chu Xiu's saber, A part of its power still leaked out, causing the entire gate of the Great Light Temple to explode. Su Xiai and the others came out one after another. Their expressions changed when they saw the shattered door. When they saw that the person who had attacked was Chu Xiu, the anger on their faces turned into shock. Why was Chu Xiu still alive? How could he still be alive? This series of questions reverberated in the minds of almost all the warriors of the Great Light Temple. Holding his saber, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and looked at Su Xiai and the others. With an emotionless smile he said, "Masters, I haven't seen you for a year. How have you been?" Su Xi's eyes flashed with deep fear. "I didn't expect that even the collapse of space wouldn't be able to take your life. Chu Xiu, you're very lucky. But what do you mean today? Could it be that you think that the person who plotted against you in the spatial crackback then was my Great Light Temple?" Chu Xiu said calmly, "I know who the culprit is. However, debts should be settled one by one. It just so happens that today, I want to settle all the debts with the Temple of Great Light." Actually, just like what Chu Xiu had said before, his grudge with the Great Light Temple was not the deepest. Actually, what Chu Xiu wanted to settle the most was not the Great Light Temple, nor was it the Sabodhi Monastery, but the Elysium. After all, Jun Wuxian had almost taken his life. But Chu Xiu was still rational. If he took his saber to seek revenge on Jun Wuxian, he would be courting death. Although he did not know what was going on at the Elysium, since Jun Wuxian did not come looking for trouble with the Kunlun devil cult, it must be because he was in trouble and did not have the time or opportunity to act. If Chu Xiu went looking for trouble with the Elysium Temple now, it would be equivalent to sending his life to their doorstep. Raising his saber and looking at the people from the Great Light Temple, Chu Xiu said coldly, "A year ago, your Great Light Temple joined forces with the Sabodhi Monastery to attack my holy church, wanting to seal my rootless sacred fire and destroy my holy church's foundation. What you have done is done. I'm preparing to cultivate a batch of elixirs. If the Great Light Temple is willing to dig out all the relics in the Bodhi Pagoda at the back of the mountain for me to cultivate elixirs, then the grudge between us will be settled. How about that?" As soon as he said that, the disciples of the Great Light Temple immediately pointed at Chu Xiu and started scolding him. Although they repeated the same words over and over again, they did not have much strength. Chu Xiu's words were basically like digging up the ancestral graves of the Great Light Temple, or even worse. It was equivalent to whipping a corpse. Su Xiai waved his hand and stopped the scolding. He said in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, do you really want to fight to the death with my Great Light Temple today? It was your good fortune that you were able to survive from that place. However, if you attack my Great Light Temple today, aren't you afraid that you'll be surrounded and attacked by the entire Orthodox sects?" Chu Xiu shook his head and raised the breaking array sword in his hand. He said slowly, "Master Su Xiai, you're a senior in the pugilistic world, but there are some things that you still don't see clearly. Placing your life and death in the hands of others is the greatest joke. Today, I stand here and want to destroy your Great Light Temple. Who can help you? Who dares to help you? You Buddhists talk about karma, past karma, present karma. Today, I, Chu Xiu, am here to break karma." As soon as Chu Xiu said that, he slashed out with the breaking array sword in his hand. Sharp demonic chi gathered and headed straight for Su Xiai. Buddhist light rose around Su Xi's body. Within the Buddhist light that enveloped him, countless Buddha shadows could be vaguely seen. The Supreme Buddhist Kingdom descended and blocked Chu Xiu's attack. However, beside Chu Xiu, Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang had already made their moves. Boundless demonic chi swirled around Wei Shuya's body. With a wave of his hand, he set up his domain. The deep demonic chi transformed into weapons such as sabers, spears, swords, halberds, and other weapons that smashed downwards. Furthermore, the power that each weapon carried was augmented by a unique martial path. Shang Tianliang casually grabbed, and a powerful spiritual chi of the universe was grasped in his hand. It turned into a storm, and as Shang Tianliang waved his hand, it smashed towards the Great Light Temple's mountain gate. The two heaven and earth elemental insight powerhouses attacking had already put great pressure on the Great Light Temple. Now Chu Xiu's attack was no weaker than the heaven and earth elemental insight powerhouses. In fact, he was even stronger. "Open the array." As Su Xiai shouted, the entire Great Light Temple was filled with dazzling Buddhist light. The blinding golden light shot into the sky and even tore apart Wei Shuya's domain in an instant. 4 top sects like the Great Light Temple that had been passed down for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years, every single one of them had their own trump cards. Just their sect-protecting array alone was built up over thousands of years, and only then could it reach its current scale. Su Yin, Su Jing, and Su Du each stood in 3 corners of the array. They formed a Buddhist seal with their hands and controlled the array. The Sanskrit Buddhist light twisted, and Buddha shadows appeared one after another, completely drowning Wei Shuya's powerful demonic qi. After stepping into the heaven and earth elemental insight, Wei Shuya spent a year stabilizing his cultivation. His current power was no longer considered weak. The effects of the supreme elixir were very strong, so Wei Shuya's power foundation was not weak at all. However, the array that the Great Light Temple had built over tens of thousands of years was not that easy to break. This array was a combination of dozens of extremely powerful arrays from the Great Light Temple. As long as someone came up with a top array later on, it would be integrated into the array. Meanwhile, on Shang Tianliang's side, the powerful storm in his hands directly smashed a large area of the Great Light Temple's mountain gate buildings into pieces. However, he was surprised to find that someone had blocked his attack, and even protected a few people. It was a tall young monk with an upper body that seemed to be cast from steel. He formed a Wisdom King seal with his hand, and the immovable Wisdom King's incarnation appeared, blocking Shang Tianliang's attack. There was a hint of surprise in Shang Tianliang's eyes. Although he had never seen the young monk in front of him before, he knew who he was. He was a genius disciple of the Great Light Temple, who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Chu Xiu on the Longhu leaderboard in the past. Wisdom King Zongxian. The current Zongxian had the power of the spiritual refinement realm, with true fire. It was unknown whether he had broken through long ago or within the past year. Over the past few years, another batch of outstanding young people had emerged in the underworld. The Longhu leaderboard had changed completely, and Chu Xiu and the others could no longer be considered as part of the younger generation. However, middle-aged people were still a little old, and young people were more like them. Looking at the new batch of so-called Longhu leaderboard heroes, and then comparing it to Chu Xiu's batch, the entire underworld could not help but secretly sigh. There was really no way to compare. Chu Xiu's batch of Longhu leaderboard heroes could be said to be all monstrous existences. Any one of the top 10 of the previous Longhu leaderboard would be able to look down on everyone in this year's Longhu leaderboard. Zongxian was someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Chu Xiu in the past. He had cultivated the Wisdom King seal to the acme of perfection, and it was even possible for him to build his own martial arts academy. Shang Tianliang had naturally heard of such a person. Now that he saw him, he could not help but think that he was indeed someone who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Chu Xiu in the past. His power was really extraordinary. Of course, he could not be compared to Chu Xiu now. No one could be compared to that monstrous existence. Shang Tianliang shook his head lightly and punched again. Everywhere it passed, everything would wither and flourish. All the power was turned into nothingness. An old monk in the true fire spirit refinement realm blocked in front of Shang Tianliang. Everywhere the wind of the punch passed, his old face instantly became much younger and rosier. However, in the next moment, the vitality in his body was instantly depleted. His body fell to the ground, but from an old monk, he had turned into a middle-aged monk. Shang Tianliang did not use his own territory. This was the power of the martial way that he had comprehended himself. The changing of the seasons, the withering of all living things. This was the natural law of life and death. However, under his punch, this law was distorted. No one could reverse life and death and return to youth. Shang Tianliang's punch could, but the price would be to pay for it with your vitality. This power could no longer be described as strange. It was simply bizarre. Even Chu Xiu could not help but look at Shang Tianliang. There was no sadness or joy on Zongxian's face, neither worry nor fear. He still held the Wisdom King seal in his hand. The great Wisdom King Dharma appeared behind him and faced Shang Tianliang's punch with all his might. At this moment, in the back mountain of the Great Light Temple, a powerful Buddhist light rose and enveloped Zongxian's body. In an instant, his power skyrocketed to the extreme. The great Wisdom King seal fell, and actually blasted Shang Tianliang away. One by one, old monks walked out from the dilapidated door. Some of them were even haggard and had a deathly aura around them. However, the Buddhist light around them was still dazzling. These people were the true trump card of the Great Light Temple, the true foundation. Chapter 1142. What exactly was the foundation of a top sect? Some said it was talent, others said it was resources. However, from the perspective of the Great Light Temple, the true foundation was actually time. These dozens of old monks, who looked extremely old and even exuded a deathly aura, were the true foundation of the Great Light Temple. Some of these people were once the first seats of the 3 major Zen halls, some were the first seats of the 6 major martial academies, and some were powerhouses of their respective halls, even if they were not first seats. When they felt that their own power had begun to decline, they left their positions to the new generation of warriors, while they went into seclusion in the Bodhi forest to cultivate. They did not lust for power, nor did they feel that it was unfair and so on. This was a foundation that had been built up over time, a habit that had been cultivated. For thousands of years, the Great Light Temple had been like this. If there were no external invasions, they would only be a memorial tablet worshipped in each hall, leaving behind relics to continue protecting the Great Light Temple. However, if there were external invasions, they would be the last layer of protection for the Great Light Temple. They would burn their last drop of blood for the Great Light Temple. One of the old monks lifted his head and looked at Shang Tianliang. His expression was emotionless, fearless and fearless. He turned to Zhongxian and said, "Zhongxian, you are the future of the Great Light Temple, and the future of Buddhism. We are old, and it is already an honor for us to fight the last battle for the Great Light Temple. Remember this power. In the future, the Great Light Temple will need to rely on you to revitalize it." As the old monk's voice fell, the dozens of old monks formed hand seals together. However, the hand seals they formed were all the same type of hand seals. Shang Tianliang felt that something was not right. He waved one hand, and the wind and clouds in the air turned into countless sharp blades that fell down. However, they were instantly deflected by the powerful Buddhist light. The power of the Buddha's light integrated into Zhongxian's body, causing his power to skyrocket. Almost instantly, his entire body was enveloped by the boundless Buddha's light. It was to the extent that his body couldn't be seen clearly, and only a dazzling Buddha's light could be seen. Zhongxian closed his eyes slightly, and when he opened them again, there were only 2 colors in front of him. The golden Buddhist light and the other grayish-white power. That power was something he did not possess. He did not know if this power was the heaven and earth mystic connection. All he knew was that this power was enough for him to battle Shang Tianliang. And it was enough for him to be qualified to protect the Temple of Great Light. The seal of the Vajrayana descended once more. It was like a landslide, like the sky was falling. The illusory figures of the Wisdom King transformed into a myriad of forms. There was the Great Wisdom King, the Hell-guarding Wisdom King, and the immovable Wisdom King. All sorts of illusory figures of the Wisdom King finally condensed into a single form, majestic and angry, suppressing evil and slaying devils. Shang Tianliang's expression was solemn. This kind of power was already comparable to the existence of the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, and it might even be stronger. His withering fist descended once again, and the power that surpassed time collided with Zhongxian's Mingwang seal. Instantly a huge shockwave erupted. When Su Xiai saw this, a demon-subduing pestle appeared in his hand, and it completely extinguished the power of Chu Xiu's blade. He said coldly, "Over the past 10,000 years, there have been countless people who have wanted to destroy the Temple of Great Light. You, Chu Xiu, are not the first, nor will you be the last. However, the Temple of Great Light still stands at the peak of the northern lands." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "That's right. The foundation that the Temple of Great Light has accumulated over the past 10,000 years is indeed astonishing. However, Abbot Su Xiai, you must know that nothing is absolute." After returning from the Daluotian lands, Chu Xiu had not only grown in terms of his strength, but also in terms of his horizons. In the Daluotian lands, There were not just martial immortals everywhere. At the very least, every top faction had a martial immortal watching over them. After seeing more than one martial immortal, and killing more than one heaven and earth elemental enlightenment realm cultivator, Chuxio's horizons had undoubtedly widened. In the past, Chuxio might have been surprised by the things that the Temple of Great Light had taken out. However, at that moment, he did not think much of it. In fact, it was full of loopholes. The next moment, Chuxio said to Shang Tianliang in a deep voice, "Palace Master Shang, hold on. The power of these old monks won't be able to hold on for long. Hold on until the end. With every death, the power that they can gather will be slightly weaker." At that moment, Shang Tianliang was grimacing in pain as he battled with Zhongxian. It was not that he was weaker than Zhongxian, but that Zhongxian's fighting style was like he was fighting with his life on the line. After all, the power did not belong to Zhongxian, so he did not have to worry about the backlash of the power. Furthermore, this was a battle to exterminate his sect. If he did not fight with his life on the line, could he possibly hold back? Therefore, in the end, the one being suppressed was Shang Tianliang. Hearing that, Shang Tianliang merely snorted coldly and said, "I also know that I have to hold on, but the key is, do you think they will give me that chance?" On the Temple of Great Light's side, some of the old monks might have felt that their power was being greatly depleted. Therefore, they were willing to risk the pain of burning their vital energy, blood, and primordial spirit in order to explode with their greatest power, and provide it to Zhongxian. Therefore, at that moment, it was not their weakest but their strongest. They had beaten Shang Tianliang to the point where he had to cover his head and flee like a rat. On Wei Shiya's side, he was also entangled with the formation. Chuxio said in a deep voice, "Elder Wei, attack the southwest where Su Jing is." Although the three of them have integrated the power of the formation into one, Su Jing is good at divination, and is the weakest in terms of power. If we attack his position forcefully, we can cause the formation to lose balance. Wei Shiya nodded and immediately began to attack Su Jing's position. Su Si's heart sank when he saw Chuxio reveal the Temple of Great Light's trump cards and weaknesses with just a few words. In reality, no martial arts technique or existence in this world was perfect. They all had weaknesses, and the Temple of Great Light's trump cards were naturally the same. It was not surprising that they had been discovered. However, Chuxio had been able to discover the easiest weakness so quickly. His battle instincts were terrifyingly sharp. Su Si did not dare to wait any longer. The demon-subduing pestle in his hand exploded with a blinding Buddhist light, and he smashed it down on Chuxio. He slashed with his saber, combining the saber will of the shattering formula with the ethereal slash. Chuxio used his full strength with every slash. The powerful primordial chi of the universe wrapped around his body like a storm, suppressing Su Si to the point where he could not even lift his head. The power he had accumulated after cultivating in the Dalyu Ocean for a year had allowed Chuxio to completely rival a powerhouse in the ethereal opening realm. His hands formed a seal, and a Buddha's demonic form appeared behind Chuxio. On his right was the Mahakala demon god, and on his left was Vairocana. The two merged into one, and the boundless Buddhist light and apocalyptic fire enveloped Su Si. Although Chuxio had not seen the Dalyu Ocean Treasure Temple in action, the Temple of Great Light's legacy should have come from the Dalyu Ocean Treasure Temple of Great Light. The Sanskrit sect and the Treasure Temple of Great Light had been fighting for many years before ancient times, and within the Dalyu Ocean, they had been fighting for tens of thousands of years. The Mahakala Temple of Great Light was created by the Sanskrit sect to fight against the Treasure Temple of Great Light. Therefore, when Chuxio used the apocalyptic fire, it also countered Su Si's Temple of Great Light's martial arts. Most importantly, Chuxio was also proficient in orthodox Buddhist martial arts. Knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy, he was able to counter the Temple of Great Light's martial arts even better. Su Si frowned, and thousands of Buddhist lands appeared around him once again. Be it the Buddhist light or the apocalyptic fire, they all swallowed everything within, digesting and killing it. In the next moment, an endless sharp gleam shone from the center of the two-faced Buddha, and the saber that broke through the formation brought with it an indomitable aura that tore the entire world apart as it slashed towards Su Si. To be able to unleash two powerful martial arts techniques at the same time was something that Chu Xiu had cultivated in the Dalyu Ocean, and it was a powerful control over martial arts. Although Su Xi was surprised, he still gripped the demon-subduing pestle tightly with both hands, and the power around him exploded to the extreme in an instant. The Vajra glared furiously, and the Buddha suppressed the demon. The demon-subduing pestle collided with the saber's edge, and an extremely loud sound erupted. However, in the next moment, Su Xi felt that something was wrong. He had previously exchanged several blows with Chu Xiu. Although they had only exchanged a few blows, based on his intuition as a martial artist, he felt that there was something wrong with Chu Xiu's formation-breaking technique this time, and it was not the same as before. In the next moment, a glaring Buddhist light bloomed in Su Xi's eyes. What had collided with his demon-subduing pestle was not a formation-breaking technique. Instead, it was a crescent-shaped saber with cracks and nicks. Illusion. Su Xi's heart was immediately filled with horror. He didn't dare to believe that he had actually unknowingly fallen for Chu Xiu's illusion. In fact, this move was learned by Chu Xiu from Moriha. Su Xi was right. Chu Xiu's talent and acuity in combat were simply terrifying. Even when Chu Xiu recalled Moriha's powerful illusory technique, he still felt shocked. It could be said that the slightest mistake in that battle could determine the outcome of the battle. Therefore, later, Chu Xiu also found time to study Moriha's illusory technique. After all, his mental strength was not weak. Although he couldn't turn illusions into reality like Moriha, making everything illusory and real, and he couldn't even touch his roots, he could still use his powerful mental strength in a fierce battle, and imperceptibly change his position. He did not know what Moriha's cultivation technique was called, so this move was named the True Illusion Technique by Chu Xiu. The boundless universe, dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows. Which one was real and which one was fake? At this moment, the moment Su Xi saw the crescent-shaped saber, he was even more horrified. Because he guessed from the shape of the crescent-shaped saber that it was Dugu Weiwei's demonic saber. Listen to the spring rain. Chu Xiu actually got the demonic saber. Listen to the spring rain. Did he get it from the place where Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji fought? Messy thoughts echoed in Su Xi's mind, but the next moment, his heart was filled with crisis. Because he suddenly realized why Chu Xiu used an illusion to replace the saber in his hand with "Listen to the spring rain." Where was the other saber? In the blink of an eye, a powerful Buddhist light suddenly burst out from Su Xi's body, and countless Sanskrit words lingered around him. Almost at the same time, in the thick world-destroying fire, the saber appeared and slashed horizontally, sending Su Xi, who was fighting against "Listen to the spring rain," flying. The saber slashed the center of the demon-subduing pestle, directly cutting it in half. Chapter 1143. The demon-subduing pestle in Su Xi's hand was a secret divine weapon of the Great Light Temple. It had been passed down for thousands of years, but now, it was cut in half by Chu Xiu's formation-breaking move. Su Xi's body was sent flying by the blade. Even though he reacted at the critical moment and defended in time, he was still a little too late. The sharp blade light entered his body and cut into his meridians, causing his face to pale. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Master Su Xi's strength is indeed extraordinary to be able to react like this." Chu Xiu's words weren't a joke, but he was speaking the truth. His series of attacks just now was as if he had calculated every step. He took 10 steps. If Su Xi had not discovered Ting Chunyu's flaw, he could have seriously injured him by breaking the formation. Even if Su Xi had discovered Ting Chunyu's flaw, he would still have been seriously injured when he lost control of his mind in his shock. However, she did not expect Su Xi to react so quickly. He discovered Ting Chunyu's attempt to break the formation, and was distracted. However, at the same time, he reacted as quickly as he could. It was evident that his state of mind was calm. Su Xi forcibly suppressed the injuries in his body. He looked at Chu Xiu with fear. The series of attacks just now had been extremely dangerous. Most importantly, he had a feeling that what Chu Xiu had done was not a common martial path. In fact, he was not used to it. Su Xi chanted the name of Buddha, and a string of Buddhist beads appeared in his long sleeve. The Buddhist beads seemed to be carved from blood jade. They were a sparkling and translucent blood-red color, and there were all kinds of Sanskrit characters engraved on them. They gave off a powerful aura, but it was different from the majestic and sacred power of Buddhism. It actually gave off a tyrannical and savage feeling. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "The Great Light Temple is indeed rich and overbearing. These divine weapons come one after another, and they are all of the finest quality. Fortunately, I am not lacking in wealth." As he spoke, Chu Xiu held listen to the spring rain in his left hand and break the formation in his right. They struck each other, and instantly, sabers hummed and demonic chi roared. In the beginning, Chu Xiu wanted to combine breaking the formation and listen to the spring rain to see if he could create a stronger devil weapon. However, later on he was prepared to strike first, so he did not delay and directly attacked the Temple of Great Light. At this time, Wei Shuya saw the prayer beads, and his expression changed. "Be careful." They were the prayer beads left behind by the traitorous Buddhist monk, the Blood Buddha. The other party was a traitor of the Great Light Temple. He questioned the Gautama Buddha, and even proclaimed himself as a Buddha. He was a madman who killed 7 of the Great Light Temple's first seats of the 3 major meditation halls, and the 6 major martial academies in one night. He betrayed the Great Light Temple, and was finally killed by the Great Light Temple in collaboration with the Subodhi Monastery. This thing is extremely evil. It's said that when he was still alive, he condensed a sarira, and in the end, he forcefully dug out his own sarira to refine it. Its power is extremely evil, and it's not something ordinary divine weapons can compare to. Dig out my sarira and use it to forge weapons? What a ruthless person. Chu Xiu laughed coldly. "Master Su Ci, you're using the weapon of your Buddhist sex traitor as a trump card. What will those Buddhist seniors who died in his hands think?" Su Ci said in a low voice. "The sinner is the person, not the weapon. In the past, the Blood Buddha killed many of our temple's senior monks. Today, the weapon he left behind is helping the Temple of Great Light to pass through the tribulation. It can be considered as repaying the karma." Chu Xiu laughed coldly. "Hypocrite. In the past, when your Temple of Great Light sealed my holy faith's rootless sacred flame, you said that it was the source of evil and had a strong demonic nature. Now that it's your turn, you're repaying the karma and making the best use of it?" Su Ci did not say anything. He chanted the name of Buddha, and Buddhist light poured into the blood-colored prayer beads. In an instant, a vast sea of blood appeared before him. A blood-colored Buddha rose from within, its body emitting a ferocious blood-colored light. However, its expression was peaceful, and its dharma was dignified. This scene was extremely strange. Su Ci's expression turned grim as he watched the blood-colored Buddha rise. Firstly, it was because he was currently heavily injured. If he forcefully activated this evil item, he would suffer some backlash. Secondly, this Blood Buddha represented a period of humiliating history for the Temple of Great Light. Now he was forced into a corner, and he had to use this item from that period of humiliating history to defend against the enemy. Although he said that he was repaying the karma, he actually felt a little uncomfortable. The blood-colored Buddha was shrouded in Buddhist light, but it was a blood-colored Buddhist light. The next moment, the blood-colored Buddha began to chant. It was an extremely strange voice, like the murmurs of an ancient demon. It was like a demonic voice piercing into the ears, ringing in Chu Xiu's mind. "Child's play." Chu Xiu snorted coldly. He raised the spiritual perception of the heaven's sun gazing at air to the extreme. Under the power of the heaven's sun gazing at air, the so-called demonic voice was broken into spiritual notes. It was merely a primordial spirit secret technique that bewitched people. However, the next moment, Chu Xiu realized that the qi and blood around him were boiling. The demonic voice shook the void, and it seemed to affect some sort of law, triggering the qi and blood around Chu Xiu. Frowning, Chu Xiu used the blood demon power to suppress the rampaging qi and blood in his body. His 2 sabers slashed down, and the ethereal slash and the breaking formula's saber will slashed out at the same time. 2 great saber gleams tore through the void, almost sealing off all directions around the blood-colored Buddha. The powerful saber gleam directly shattered the blood-colored Buddha. However, the next moment, the blood-colored Buddha reappeared from the sea of blood. It formed a Buddhist seal with its hands, and with a towering blood-colored light, it descended towards Chu Xiu. An undying body? The two-sided Buddha Dharma appeared behind Chu Xiu once again. The Vairocana Dharma formed a colorless fixed palm mudra in its hands, and it faced the blood-colored Buddha. The Mahakala Devil Dharma form, on the other hand, burst out a large amount of apocalyptic fire from its three eyes. It burned towards the sea of blood, trying to evaporate it. In theory, the power of apocalyptic fire could devour everything, unless one used an equal amount of power to counteract it. However, when the apocalyptic fire came into contact with the sea of blood, although it also began to burn intensely, it did not have any effect. To be precise, it did have an effect. However, from the sea of blood, the same power emerged, and it continued to devour other powers. It was as if the power of the sea of blood could replenish itself without limit. Seeing this scene, Su Xiai also sighed. Outsiders only had a rough idea of the secrets of the Blood Buddha, but only the Great Light Temple themselves knew how amazing the other party was. The Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Temple were both Buddhist sections. Whether it was body refining or cultivation techniques, they were all about the orthodox Buddhist sect's karma and reincarnation. The Blood Buddha, on the other hand, blazed a different path. He believed that all things in the world died from birth and came back to life from destruction. Life and death were originally one entity, and as long as one could control this power, one would obtain endless power, and even their lifespan would be extended indefinitely, becoming an immortal existence. However, this kind of thing was destined to be a crazy idea. In this world, there was nothing that existed for eternity. However, he had forcefully relied on his crazy thoughts to create an alternative cultivation system. He had even cultivated a power that was different from the normal rules of the world. This kind of talent could be said to be amazing. Even if it was not to say that no one would be able to do it in the future, it was at least unprecedented. However, if the other party did not betray the orthodoxy, perhaps he would have left the Great Light Temple with another trump card, and not this evil thing. Chu Xiu and the Blood Buddha fought back and forth several times. Even Chu Xiu could not see through the power of the rules of this thing, as if it could not be killed. However, Chu Xiu thought the same as Su Xiai. All things in the world had their own rules, and in this world, there was nothing that could not be killed. If there was, it was only because one's power was not strong enough. Chu Xiu withdrew his sword and retreated. As he formed a seal with his hands, pure demonic qi had already surrounded his body. Ghosts and gods roared and murmured. Heaven's cry blood rain suddenly descended, and the sky and earth were covered by dark clouds of demonic qi. A large demonic hand reached down, but it did not want to tear the Blood Buddha apart. Instead, it wanted to drag the entire river of blood into the land of extreme negative energy. Seeing this, Su Xi's expression suddenly changed. He directly channeled all his power into the blood-colored Buddha beads, increasing the power of the boundless sea of blood to resist the power of the devil's cry of heaven's great compassion mantra. Seeing that both sides were in a stalemate, Su Xiai decisively burned his blood essence and channeled the blood mist into the blood-colored Buddha beads. He used his absolute power to resist Chu Xiu's great compassion mantra. However, when Su Xiai burned more than half of his blood essence, he felt that something was wrong. His power was weakening, but why did it seem like both sides were still evenly matched? The remaining power of qi and blood converged and surged into his eyes. When Su Xiai saw everything in front of him, he almost vomited blood. It was an illusion again. The power of the great compassion mantra was already weakening, and Chu Xiu did not compete with him in terms of power at all. In the end, he had burned a small part of his blood essence. The true illusion mantra was a secret technique that originated from the Buddhist sect to confuse the heavenly emperor palace. It could be said that it was impossible to guard against. When Moriha used it, it could condense illusions into reality, and one would not be able to tell whether it was real or not. Now that Chu Xiu had executed it, coupled with his powerful battle prowess, he was able to replace the beam with the pillar in the middle of an intense battle. Under such a tense situation, how many people could sense the movements in their surroundings at all times? This thing is not bad. Let me give you some more power. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, he used the blood demon power technique, and a part of Chu Xiu's power of qi and blood directly surged into the sea of blood. This sea of blood first bore a small part of Su Xi's power of qi and blood, and then Chu Xiu poured a part of his power of qi and blood into it, making it several times stronger than before. However, it was no longer a power that Su Xi could control. The Buddha beads were frighteningly hot. In the next moment, the sea of blood churned and exploded. The blood-colored Buddha exploded with a loud bang, and the blood-colored Buddha beads also suddenly exploded. The powerful backlash immediately caused Su Xi to vomit a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1144. There was no power in this world that was indestructible. Although the blood Buddha was strange, since it could not be melted, then it would explode. Su Xi's face was ashen. Even though he had used all his trump cards, he was still defeated. He was defeated by a young junior, Chu Xiu. Whether it was the foundation of power, the control of martial arts power, or the various responses during a fight, he was inferior to Chu Xiu in all aspects, except for a useless realm. He was defeated, but the Great Light Temple was also going to be defeated. Wei Shuya attacked Su Jing's position. Although Su Jing was also a martial artist in the True Fire spiritual refinement realm, his foundation of power was not as good as Su Yun's. It was not even as good as Su Du, who had stepped into the True Fire spiritual refinement realm much later than him. One wrong step, and there would be no more chance of redemption. Although Su Jing was good at divination, he had never divined his own fate. The moment he lost control of his own power, a demonic sword made of demonic qi cut open the formation with its boundless sharpness, and directly nailed the fat monk who always had a smile on his face to the ground. Junior brother. Senior brother. Su Xi and the others let out a cry of sorrow. Su Jing had been killed, and there were only two people controlling the formation. Under Wei Shuya's strong attack, it was already in danger. On Zhongxian's side, although he relied on the power of the old monks to suppress Shang Tianliang, more and more old monks were dying, and almost half of them had already died. With so many people dead, even if they burned their essence blood and primordial spirit before they died, the power brought about by the sublimation was not as strong as before. The Great Light Temple was already in danger. At this moment, Su Yun, who was already on the verge of collapse in the formation, suddenly had a seven-colored Buddha's light rise around him. As he formed a seal with both hands, the golden Buddha's light turned into the Tree of Seven Wonders, which bloomed in front of Su Jing. 7 different colored Buddha's light hung on the branches of the Tree of Seven Wonders, radiating brilliance. Each Buddha's light evolved into a domain, supporting the formation that Wei Shuya had previously destroyed, causing the entire formation to instantly rise to another level. Heaven and Earth Mystic, one person with 7 domains. Some people had done it before, but it wasn't safe, and the probability was extremely low. After all, not everyone would fight to the death when they were only one step away from breaking through. Lu Fengxian's breakthrough to the True Fire Spirit Refinement realm was already shocking enough. Now, Su Yun's breakthrough to the mysterious Heaven and Earth realm was simply shocking. Most importantly, he actually controlled 7 domains. Could it be that he had cultivated all 7 types of martial arts to the extreme? Su Xi let out a long laugh, but there was not much excitement in his eyes. Instead, there was a sense of relief and sorrow. Among the martial artists of the Su generation, in terms of talent and ability, the one with the greatest hope of becoming an abbot was not him, but Su Yun. Over the years, many people had said that his position as abbot was only in name and not in reality, that he was inferior to Su Yun and so on. It was only when he stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth that these voices disappeared. However, Su Xi had never said anything to such voices because he knew that he was indeed inferior to Su Yun. If Su Yun wanted to break through to the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, his speed would definitely be faster than him. However, the Tree of Seven Wonders that Su Yun cultivated could be said to be unprecedented. No one in the entire underworld had tried to cultivate 7 domains at the same time, but now he had finally succeeded. At this moment, Su Xi shouted, "Junior brother Su Yun." Just when Chu Xiu thought that he was going to let Su Yun start to counterattack, he shouted, "Use your Tree of Seven Wonders to cut open the domains and leave with Zhongxian and the others." Su Yun was stunned. He had not expected that Su Xi would let him escape after he had finally broken through in the fierce battle. Su Xi did not care about him at all. Instead, he immediately shouted at the remaining old monks, "Transfer your power to me." These old monks already had the will to die, so they would not have any personal emotions. They would only listen to the abbot's orders. Hearing this, they immediately transferred their power to Su Xi. At this moment, the Buddha's light around Su Xi soared to the extreme. Even his entire body seemed to be integrated into the Buddha's light. "Go quickly." With a shout, thousands of Buddhist countries appeared behind Su Xi, but all of them integrated into his body. At this moment, Su Xi, who was wrapped in endless Buddha's light, was like a real Buddha that had descended. He had not planned to leave from the beginning. Instead, he had the will to die. He could not win, and he could not win. Even if Su Yun had stepped into the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, it would be useless. All he could do was delay a little. Therefore, he would still lose and he would still die. However, although he would die, the Great Light Temple would not be completely destroyed. Su Yun's breakthrough did not actually give them a chance to turn defeat into victory. Instead, it gave them a chance to preserve the Great Light Temple's power inheritance. After being Su Xi's senior and junior brother for so many years, Su Yun understood what Su Xi meant. The expression on his face changed several times, but in the end, he did not say a word. The 7 domains opened and directly enveloped all the surviving warriors of the Great Light Temple. The Great Light Temple's Gang Chi pulled them and quickly escaped down the mountain. The scene was simply shocking. However, how could Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang let them go just like that? Just as the two of them were about to stop Su Xi, the old monks from the Temple of Great Light ignited their blood essence and primordial spirits in unison. Powerful energy surged into Su Xi's body in an instant. In an instant, Buddhist light enveloped the entire peak of the mountain, preventing Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya from taking another step forward. Amit Ba. Su Xi put his palms together and closed his eyes. Su Yun could escape. Zhong Xian was still alive, and the Great Light Temple's inheritance was still there. As the abbot, the others could escape, but he could not. Turning back to look at the Great Light Temple, which had become a little ruined from the battle, he seemed to see the past from a long time ago. A young novice monk knelt in front of the Buddha statue, and his master asked, "In the future, when you learn the Buddhist Dharma, what do you want to do?" The young novice monk said firmly, "Save the world, get rid of demons and defend the Tao." His master smiled and said, "Getting rid of demons and defending the Tao is a little difficult. Demons can never be gotten rid of. Since you want to save the world, then your Dharma name will be Su Xi." Su Xi let out a long sigh. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he had wanted to get rid of demons and defend the Tao, but now the Jianghu was filled with demonic flames. He wanted to save the world, but as far as he could see, all he could see was the suffering of the people. He had been the abbot for a lifetime, but he had accomplished nothing. Only by protecting the last hope of the Great Light Temple could he be worthy of his position. A Buddha could only forge a golden body after going through thousands of tribulations. This was not the first time the Great Light Temple was going through a tribulation, but it was definitely not the last. The Buddhist Dharma is boundless. Su Xi put his palms together. An endless Buddha's light spread out, assimilating all the power in the surroundings, dyeing everything in a dazzling golden color. Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya's expressions changed abruptly, and they hurriedly retreated. However, the Buddha's light seemed to have an extremely strong attractive force that pulled them back, making it impossible for them to take another step back. Chu Xiu's spiritual senses were raised to the extreme, and he could feel the strength of this power. Once the old monk started fighting with all his might, his power was frighteningly strong. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body was shrouded by powerful demonic qi, and a large amount of spiritual qi of the heavens and earth surged into his body. In an instant, Chu Xiu's body expanded to thousands of feet, reaching the sky above him and the ground below him. Using the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, Chu Xiu stood in front of Shang Tianliang and Wei Shuya, slapping out with both palms to resist the power. Time seemed to have stopped in an instant. In the next instant, a powerful force erupted, and golden light shot up into the sky. It was so bright that the entire northern Yan could probably see it. Chu Xiu only felt one thing, and that was pain. The powerful impact shook his entire body. Although Chu Xiu could withstand this power under the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, the pain from the impact was not so easy to negate. After some time, the powerful force finally disappeared. Chu Xiu could no longer maintain the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth. His body shrank, and his face turned pale. He almost fell to the ground. Wei Shuya supported Chu Xiu. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but after looking around, he let out a long sigh and did not say anything. Shang Tianliang saw that Chu Xiu had only overexerted himself and was not injured, so he was not too worried. He just looked around and sighed. These monks are really ruthless. They are ruthless to others, but they are even more ruthless to themselves. Looking around, the entire mountain peak where the Great Light Temple was had been flattened by the power that Su Xiai had unleashed. Su Xiai and those old monks naturally did not even have their bones left. However, this was the ancestral land of the Great Light Temple. When Su Yan led them to escape, he had only taken the people with him. However, the Bodhi Forest, Sutra Depository, and other places of the Great Light Temple were still here. In the end, Su Xiai did not hold back when he unleashed his full power before dying. It was obvious that he wanted to perish together with Chu Xiu. At the same time, he destroyed all his belongings. Even if he had to turn them into ashes, he would not leave anything for Chu Xiu and the others. Shang Tianliang asked, "Are we still going to give chase?" Chu Xiu threw 2 pills into his mouth, shook his head and said, "No. We can't catch up anyway." If he still had the ability to fight, he could give chase. But now he could not make a move for a short period of time. Although the power of the law embodiment of heaven and earth was great, the consumption was also extremely shocking. No one could say for sure if the Great Light Temple still had any trump cards. Anyway, he had achieved his goal of annihilating the entire sect. He just did not kill them all. That's right, what you displayed just now was a remarkable power. Shang Tianliang suddenly asked. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "It's the remarkable power that I studied with you on the statue back then. It's called the law embodiment of heaven and earth. Remarkable powers are a manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. There are not many people in the lower realm who have mastered remarkable powers, but in the Daoyuotian world, remarkable powers are not rare." After resting for a while and recovering some vitality, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Let's go to the Northern Yan court." Shang Tianliang said in surprise, "Why are we still going to the Northern Yan court?" A cold light flashed in Chu Xiu's eyes. He said, "From now on the Northern Yan will destroy Buddhism." Chapter 1145. In the Northern Yan Imperial Court, Northern Yan Emperor Xiang Li, Xiang Chong, Xiang Wu, and the other powerhouses of the Xiang royal family, as well as Beigong Bailey and the other powerhouses of the military, were all gathered there. It was not because the Northern Yan had announced something major, but because the shockwave that came from the Great Light Temple was just too shocking. The Buddhist light shot up into the sky. Even those in Yanjing City could see it. Powerhouses like Xiangcheng and the others could even feel the powerful shockwave. They could not help but wonder if someone from the Great Light Temple had made a breakthrough. To them, this was not good news. Xiang Li said worriedly, "The Great Light Temple dominates the north. If someone makes another breakthrough, I'm worried that the Northern Yan pugilistic world will not be peaceful." Beigong Bailey frowned and said, "I don't think that's possible. This shockwave is very powerful. It's so powerful that it has surpassed the arcane enlightenment level. Is Su Xiai going to make another breakthrough? The monks from the Great Light Temple always make some noise from time to time. I'll send someone to check out the Great Light Temple and see what they're up to." Suddenly a voice was heard. "There's no need. From now on, the Great Light Temple will no longer exist in the Northern Yan." Suddenly hearing this voice, everyone present was shocked. They were in the Northern Yan Imperial Palace. There were formations everywhere. Who could come here without anyone knowing? However, they reacted in the next moment. Why did the voice sound so familiar? The door of the hall was pushed open. Chu Xiu, Shang Tianliang, and Wei Shuya walked straight into the hall. Everyone was stunned when they saw Chu Xiu. They did not know whether to be surprised or happy. A year ago, when Chu Xiu died, Chu Xiu's subordinates all went to Kunlun Mountain to cultivate. The Northern Yan imperial court did the same. Since then, no one had come to suppress the Northern Yan martial world. The Northern Yan imperial court had to allocate some of its forces to stabilize the Northern Yan martial world, while keeping an eye on Eastern Qi. If not for the fact that Lu Haochang of Eastern Qi was so addicted to sexual intercourse that his body was weak, and he was recuperating, he would not have the time to cause trouble for the Northern Yan. Otherwise, the Northern Yan would have been in a state of chaos for quite some time. In the past year, everyone thought that Chu Xiu must have died. Even the Northern Yan imperial court had removed the name of Zhenwu Hall. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would come back? At this moment, everyone was stunned and did not know what to say. Xiangli reacted quickly. His face suddenly showed a look of ecstasy. He stood up and said, "I knew it. Official Chu is blessed by the heavens. He would never die like this." The Northern Yan martial world has been in a mess without the Zhenwu Hall to suppress it. Now that official Chu is back, the Northern Yan martial world can finally be at peace. As Xiangli spoke, he waved his hand at the eunuch behind him, signaling him to quickly put up the name of Zhenwu Hall. Chu Xiu did not care about Xiangli's little trick. After all, for the current Chu Xiu, the little power and status of Zhenwu Hall were nothing to him. Hearing this, Chu Xiu just said lightly, "There are many people in this martial world who want me, Chu Xiu, dead. Unfortunately, I always let them down." Beigong Bailey and the others looked at Chu Xiu with a trace of horror. This Chu Xiu was simply an existence that could not be killed. Once was luck, but twice was skill. In the future, if anyone wanted to touch Chu Xiu, they would have to think twice. If Chu Xiu were to return and seek revenge on them, would they be able to bear the consequences? Xiang Wu asked, "Official Chu, what did you say just now? What do you mean by there is no more Great Light Temple in the Northern Yan martial world?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "It's exactly what it means. The Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery took advantage of my absence and joined forces to go up to Kunlun Mountain. They wanted to seal the rootless sacred flame of my holy sect and destroy the foundation of my holy sect. This is a great feud that will not end until one of us is dead. Now the abbot of the Great Light Temple, Su Xiai, is dead. The old monks of the previous generation of the Great Light Temple are all dead. The northern mountain peak where the Great Light Temple was located has been razed to the ground. If you go now, you won't even see the ruins because everything has been turned to dust." Every time Chu Xiu spoke, they would gasp. They were shocked to the point that they were simply speechless. The Great Light Temple of the Northern Buddhist sect, which had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, was destroyed by Chu Xiu just like that? How could it be turned into ashes so easily? After they digested the news for a while, Chu Xiu said, "I only came to ask of your majesty." Xiangli hurriedly said, "Official Chu, please say it. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it for Official Chu." Chu Xiu said lightly, "It's very simple. I want to destroy Buddhism in the Northern Yan martial world. Only 3 people came from my side, so a large portion of the people from the Great Light Temple are still alive. They may or may not be in the Northern Yan martial world. Therefore, I will need your majesty's help in the following matters. From now on, the land of the Northern Yan martial world will be banned from the Buddhist sect. If there are any survivors of the Great Light Temple, the weak ones will be eliminated immediately. If the strong ones are found, just report to the Holy Church." The corners of everyone's mouths twitched slightly, hearing Chu Xiu use the term survivors. Historically, only the demonic path was called a survivor. Since when did the leader of the Northern Buddhist sect, the Great Light Temple, become a survivor? However, Chu Xiu had even razed the Great Light Temple to the ground. He really did have the right to be called a survivor. Xiangli said directly, "Please rest assured, Official Chu. I will immediately issue an order to hunt down the survivors of the Great Light Temple in the Northern Yan martial world." Not to mention Chu Xiu's terrifying strength, just based on the relationship between the Northern Yan martial world and Chu Xiu, Xiangli would not reject Chu Xiu. Anyway, in the eyes of outsiders, The Northern Yan imperial court was already birds of a feather with Chu Xiu. If they did not help Chu Xiu, what else could they do? Chu Xiu had no intention of staying in the Northern Yan imperial court. After giving instructions to the Northern Yan imperial court, Chu Xiu turned and left. Xiang Chong looked at Chu Xiu's back and suddenly let out a long sigh. In the past, when his royal brother was still alive, he wanted to make use of Chu Xiu. In the end, even his chosen successor was gone. Moreover, it was also fortunate that the Xiang royal family took the big picture into consideration and did not fall out with Chu Xiu. Otherwise, it was unknown whether the Northern Yan martial world would still have the surname Xiang. Xiang Chong said to Xiang Li, "Your Majesty, get ready." Xiang Li nodded and said, "I know. I will immediately get people ready to search for the remnants of the Great Light Temple in the Northern Yan." Xiang Chong shook his head and said, "I'm not talking about that. The entire Northern Yan martial world needs to be prepared." "What kind of preparation?" "Preparation for the world to be in chaos." Xiang Chong let out a long sigh and said, "A year ago, everyone thought that Chu Xiu was dead. In the end, he has returned. He has traveled thousands of miles and destroyed the Great Light Temple. The power of the demonic path is unstoppable. In West Chu, the moon-worshipping sect Yi Shaonan is in seclusion to refine the demonic seed. Once he comes out, he will also have the power to sweep the world. Under such circumstances, the entire Jianghu, regardless of whether it is the righteous, demonic, or Buddhist, will be involved. Therefore, the world from now on will no longer be under the control of the imperial court. To be able to protect the peace of the Northern Yan martial world is already a blessing." In the main hall of the Northern Yan imperial court, everyone nodded with a heavy expression. The golden age of martial arts was not a good thing for the imperial court. At least it was so for them now. In the face of absolute power, everything would become uncontrollable. In the process of Chu Xiu's return to the Kunlun devil cult, the entire Jianghu exploded like a bomb had been thrown into the calm surface of a lake. The demon lord Chu Xiu had returned. Traveling thousands of miles, the three of them joined forces to destroy the Great Light Temple. The mountain peaks of the northern land had been reduced to ashes and scorched earth. The Northern Yan Martial Suppression Hall had been rebuilt and the remnants of the Great Light Temple had been hunted down. There were no more Buddhist monks in the Northern Yan territory. Su Yun, the first seat of Wang Nianzhen Hall, had led the remaining disciples of the Great Light Temple to Eastern Qi. The Great Light Temple still had a trace of incense. When these pieces of news were smashed in front of everyone's eyes, it almost turned the entire Jianghu upside down. Apart from being shocked, everyone did not know what to say. Most of them were so shocked that they could not say a word. Chu Xiu had died once and returned a year later. He destroyed the Lu family and the Sun family and robbed the Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu had died twice and returned a year later. He brought Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang to travel thousands of miles and destroyed the Great Light Temple of the Northern Buddhist sect in one day. This kind of shock, this kind of power, no matter what one said, it would definitely be very weak. However, everyone had the same thought. Just like Xiang Chong, the Jianghu was not going to be peaceful. It should be said that the entire Jianghu had never been peaceful. The previous year of peace was just an illusion before the storm. In the Chunyang Dao sect, the warriors of the Chunyang Dao sect and the real martial arts cult, who had not interacted much in the past year, gathered together again. However, Lu Chonglu did not come. He was in seclusion. The one who came was Han Jisi. The two of them sat opposite each other, but no one spoke for a long time. It was because they really did not know what to say. The strength of the real martial arts cult was there. After hearing the news, the hearts of the people of the real martial arts cult had turned cold. Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang were two powerhouses in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. Although Chu Xiu had not reached the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, his combat power was more than that. According to Su Yun, Su Ci was not a match for him at all. If he did not fight with his life, he would not be able to harm him at all. In the entire Jianghu, which sect could gather three powerhouses in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth? How could the real martial arts cult fight with them? Ling Yunzi had the same thought. Previously, he thought that Chu Xiu was dead. He even felt a little sad. In the end, Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would appear in front of them alive and kicking? Moreover, he had become even more powerful. He was so powerful that it made people tremble. After a while, Han Jisi said, "Sect leader Ling Yunzi, what do you mean? Are you going to form an alliance of the orthodox sects again to fight against Chu Xiu?" Ling Yunzi smiled bitterly. An alliance of orthodox sects? Do you dare? The Chunyang Dao sect doesn't dare anymore. As a powerhouse in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth, he said the word "don't dare" in public. One could imagine how much impact Chu Xiu had on Ling Yunzi. Han Jisi was silent because he didn't dare either. Every time he was killed, he would come back again. His strength would become stronger. Every time, he would set off a bloody storm. Facing such an undefeatable existence, who would dare to come? Chapter 1146. The Chunyang Dao sect and the real martial arts sect were afraid. How many sects that participated in the alliance of the orthodox sects were not afraid? No matter how strong Chu Xiu was, as long as he was not as strong as Dugu Weiwei, everyone dared to attack him. However, the problem was that even if you could kill Chu Xiu now, who could guarantee that he was really dead? The Great Light Temple believed it. Hence, the Great Light Temple was destroyed and their ancestral land was razed to the ground. Su Yin and the others were like stray dogs, hiding in Eastern Qi. They did not even dare to come out and ask for help. No one had such confidence. Hence, no one dared to attack at this time. Although they knew that Chu Xiu would not stop because of the existence of the Sabodhi monastery. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult also wanted to seal the rootless sacred flame. Chu Xiu had already publicly announced that this time, he was only here for personal revenge. It had nothing to do with the orthodox sect or the demon sect. Although no one believed it, at this time, they had no choice but to believe it. In the Sabodhi monastery, Rama, Monk Bukong, and the others who were in seclusion were all there. All the sadhus outside were also summoned back by the Sabodhi monastery. When the news of the destruction of the Great Light Temple spread, the Sabodhi monastery knew that the next one would be them. Desolate Mo pointed at his own eyes and smiled bitterly. When Chu Xiu died, I thought I had seen wrongly back then. Who would have thought that the scene I saw back then would be a nightmare come true? In the past, Xiao Mok had predicted the scene of Chu Xiu destroying the Sabodhi monastery. This had also led to the first conflict between the Sabodhi monastery and Chu Xiu. Later on, when Chu Xiu died, he thought that he had made a mistake in his divination. In the end, who would have thought that that divination was the pinnacle of his ability to pry into the secrets of heaven? However, he thought that it was his own mistake. In his life, he had seen the sect destroyed twice, and it was caused by him. Among the people present, Xiao Mok could be said to be the one who suffered the most. Monk Bukong shook his head. I heard about you, but it has nothing to do with you. The word karma can't be seen or touched. Even without the karma brought about by your divination, we still wouldn't have been able to escape this calamity. Chu Xiu died and the rootless sacred flame had to be sealed. Hence, the final outcome would be the same. This is karma and fate. You can see it but cannot change it. Monk Bukong was not comforting Xiao Mok. He was speaking the truth. Even the existence of the heaven and earth mystic realm could not change karma, let alone Xiao Mok. In this chain of cause and effect, Xiao Mok was only a chess piece, and he wasn't even the most important one. Xiao Moha looked at Rama and asked, Abbot, what should we do now? If we can't do it, we should escape to South Sea. There are very few martial arts sects in the South Sea, and the Devil Path only has the 6th heavenly demon sect. We don't have to be afraid. When the time comes, we can just find an island and live in seclusion. You are afraid, Rama suddenly said. Xiao Mok was stunned. Then he said in a low voice, I am not afraid of death. I am afraid that Sabodhi monastery will not be able to hold on. His life was given by Rama. For Rama and Sabodhi monastery he could take his life at any time. However, he was really afraid of seeing the scene from his divination again. Rama said faintly, retreating is easy, but coming back is difficult. We can retreat, but can we dig out the Sabodhi tree in the back mountain? We can retreat, but can we take away the Buddha pagoda under Sabodhi monastery? There are too many things to put down. I am afraid that if we leave, our Buddhist heart will be destroyed. Monk Bukong also nodded and sighed. That's right. It's easy to retreat, but it's hard to come back. 500 years ago, under the pressure of the Kunlun devil cult, many sects chose to hide overseas. In the end, very few returned. Back then, Sabodhi Monastery did not leave. Why should we leave now? Xiao Mok could not help but say. At that time, the Kunlun devil cult's demonic might spread throughout the world. I was not the only one who suffered. Sabodhi Monastery can stay. However, Chuxio's next target will definitely be us. If we don't leave now, how are we going to stop Chuxio? Take my life. Take my life. Monk Bukong and Rama almost said these 4 words at the same time. No one was unafraid of death. But in the face of a life and death crisis that concerned their sect, all they could offer was their lives. However, Monk Bukong was someone who had fought against the Kunlun devil cult 500 years ago. Rama was also the youngest and most talented of all the heaven and earth elemental enlightenment experts in the world. What they meant by risking their lives was not the same as what a brute would do. Rama waved his hand, indicating for Monk Bukong to speak first. Monk Bukong said in a low voice, I cultivate the undying Zen and have already died once. I do not have much vitality left. The Buddha pagoda is nurturing a Adumbra that has not bloomed in 10,000 years. When the time comes, I will use my remaining vitality as nourishment to stimulate the Adumbra to bloom ahead of time, and release that moment of brilliance. Rama said lightly, I cannot control the power of the Sabodhi tree, but I can forcefully control it by burning my primordial spirit. As for how long I can control it, it will depend on whether I can hold on first or Chuxio and the rest can. In terms of foundation, Sabodhi Monastery was stronger than Great Light Temple. This foundation referred to the foundation of time. The Adumbra flower was a legendary ancient divine flower. When Buddha smiled while holding a flower, the flower he was holding was the Adumbra flower. It was said that when the Adumbra bloomed, it would release an incomparably bright and powerful power to protect the pure land of Buddhism. Unfortunately, Sabodhi Monastery had nurtured this flower for 10,000 years, and used countless treasures to provide it with power. Yet they were unable to nurture it until it bloomed. As for the Sabodhi tree, it was said that it could be traced back to the top Buddhist sect of ancient times, the Heavenly Luo Monastery. The Sabodhi tree was originally the inheritance treasure of the Heavenly Luo Monastery. However, it could not be moved, so it was not brought into the Dalu Ocean. In the end, the Sabodhi tree was only slightly damaged in the great calamity of ancient times, and did not completely wither. After it was discovered by the patriarch of Sabodhi Monastery, it was carefully repaired. Even the name of Sabodhi Monastery came from this tree. Monk Bukong and Rama had used the strongest trump cards of Sabodhi Monastery. No matter how strong Chuxio was, they were prepared and would not be suddenly destroyed like Great Light Temple. Xiao Mok could not help but ask, what about me? Rama patted Xiao Mok's shoulder and said, Of course it is to preserve the last bit of inheritance of Sabodhi Monastery. Since it is a fight to the death, how can there be an absolute victory? If we lose, you will be the next abbot of Sabodhi Monastery. When Xiao Mok heard this, he immediately wanted to stand up and say something, but was pressed back down by Rama. He shook his head and said, I know what you mean, but in history, when a sect reaches a critical moment of life and death, only the strong will fight to the death. When have you ever seen the weak fight to the death? That is not fighting to the death, it is courting death. Every position has its own thing to do. I am the abbot. At such a critical moment, I should be the one to fight to the death. Back then when I was so young, no one objected to me taking the position of abbot. That was because they trusted me. And now, I want them to see that they did not trust the wrong person. Rama was not a man of many words. Even when he was young, he was like this. Today, after he said so much to Xiao Mok immediately understood his determination. The people of Sabodhi Monastery thought that after Chuxio finished off the people of Great Light Temple, he would attack them. In reality, Chuxio was currently recovering his strength on Mount Kunlun. A remarkable power like the law phenomenon of heaven and earth was not something that ordinary people could use. The consumption was close to that of Chuxio's source. In fact, if Chuxio used it for another breath's time, his source would be depleted. It took almost 10 days before Chu Xiu's own strength was restored. On the side of Sabodhi Monastery, Chu Xiu was not in a hurry to make a move. Although the news had spread, he still needed to be fully prepared to make a move. After all, the strength of Sabodhi Monastery was a lot stronger than that of Great Light Temple. Now that his identity had been revealed, the next time he made a move, he had to attack openly. A surprise attack was no longer useful. In fact, Chu Xiu was so high-profile, publicly announced that he would destroy Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, and even asked the Northern Yen to directly destroy Buddhism. It was not that he really hated those monks to the bone. In fact, he also wanted to use the general situation to force Sabodhi Monastery to withdraw, so that he could legitimately take over South China. Of course, this was only the best idea. Most likely, Sabodhi Monastery would not leave. This kind of big sect that had been passed down for thousands of years had its own dignity and bottom line. It was not an ordinary small sect that would go with the flow and only see the wind. Therefore, if Sabodhi Monastery did not leave, he had to be more prepared on his side. He had to succeed in one battle. The first thing Chu Xiu did was to fuse breaking formation and listen to spring rain together. In fact, Chu Xiu did not know how to forge weapons. But according to Lu Jianghe, innate objects would react to each other, so he just needed to throw them in. Although most of what he said last time was nonsense, it was fine as long as it worked. Chu Xiu came to the rootless sacred flame. He hesitated for a moment, but he still threw listen to spring rain and breaking formation in his hands into it. In an instant, the hot rootless sacred flame wrapped the two blades. Breaking formation did not change at all in the rootless sacred flame, but listen to spring rain began to melt, turning into molten iron, and merging into the blade of breaking formation. Perhaps it was because listening to spring rain had lost its artifact spirit. The fusion of the two sabers was still based on the formation breaking shape. However, it was thicker, and the curve of the blade was larger, becoming sharper. And as listen to spring rain melted, bits of black imprint also merged into breaking formation. When Chu Xiu got the breaking formation that had been fused, blurry images flashed in his mind, but they contained a strange rhythm. They flashed back and forth, and finally merged into Chu Xiu's mind. These were the imprints that Dugu Weiwei had left behind when he used the blade in the past, and they were also the instincts that Listen to Spring Rain had recorded. Under the tempering of the rootless sacred flame, they finally revealed the fusion. Chapter 1147. After breaking the formation and fusing with Listen to Spring Rain, Chu Xiu couldn't tell whether or not its power had become stronger. However, its sharpness was stronger than before. The sword Dao imprints that belonged to Dugu Weiwei were not techniques. To be precise, they were more like experiences. Although they had been integrated into Chu Xiu's body, it was not something that Chu Xiu could digest in a short period of time. Most likely, he would only be able to fully comprehend it in battle. After doing all this, Chu Xiu prepared to sneak back to the Dayu Ocean. With Chu Xiu's current strength in the Kunlun Devil Cult, Chu Xiu had a certain degree of confidence in defeating the Sabodhi Zen Monastery. However, what Chu Xiu wanted was absolute certainty. Hence, the few people he had under him were clearly not enough. As for where they came from, it was naturally the Dayu Ocean. After gathering everyone, Chu Xiu told them about his plan. Then he said to Wei Shuya and Shang Tianliang, "Old Wei City Master Shang, I'll leave this to you for this period of time." Wei Shuya nodded his head. Shang Tianliang placed his hands behind his back and said nonchalantly, "Brat, you're just worrying for nothing. Even when you weren't around for a year, the Kunlun demon sect didn't collapse." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and did not say anything. Shang Tianliang did not choose to leave the Kunlun devil cult at its most critical moment. Instead, he helped to stabilize the people's morale. Chu Xiu remembered all of this. However, this old man's temper was not very good. Even though he cultivated his body and cultivated his mind every day, he still looked very indignant. He wanted to argue with everyone he saw. Although Chu Xiu's strength was now completely stronger than Shang Tianliang's, he did not see Shang Tianliang respect him, the master of Kunlun. At this moment, Mei Qinglian suddenly said, "How about taking me there? I haven't even seen the place where the legendary ancient experts went." Before Chu Xiu could say anything, Mu Zi immediately said, "I want to go too." Mei Qinglian's beautiful eyes twitched as she glanced at Mu Zi. This lass had learned her lesson. If she didn't speak, she wouldn't speak either. Whatever she did, she would do the same. Chu Xiu rubbed his head, feeling a headache coming on. There was no harm in bringing them along. Anyway, they had to go there sooner or later. Just as Chu Xiu was about to agree, Lu Jianghe said, "I want to go as well. Once we're in the Dalu Ocean, if there's anyone you don't like, you can hand them over to me. I want to taste the blood and qi of the ancients and see how it's different here." As soon as Lu Jianghe said this, Mei Qinglian and Mu Zi glared at him at the same time. Their glares were as sharp as knives, causing Lu Jianghe to scratch his head. "What do you mean? When did I offend you?" Seeing that so many people wanted to go, Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Brother Lu and Senior Chu, you two can come along as well. Familiarize yourselves with the power of the Dalu Ocean. Before I return, you don't need to do anything in Kunlun. You just need to observe the situation in the pugilistic world." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mei Qinglian and Mu Zi glared at Lu Jianghe again. Lu Jianghe turned his head away and snorted. He decided not to lower himself to the level of these two women. 500 years ago, he knew that there were two kinds of people that were not to be trifled with. One was the powerful and narrow-minded people like Patriarch Dugu, and the other was the women. Bringing people to the Dalu Ocean was not difficult. They just needed to be careful and not be discovered by the people of the Subodhi Monastery. Fortunately, when the Subodhi Monastery learned that Chu Xiu was about to attack, they began to withdraw all their forces into the sect. Along the way, Chu Xiu and the others restrained their strength to the extreme. They did not see a single Subodhi Monastery warrior. The passage between the two worlds was not dangerous. If Chu Xiu could pass through, Mei Qinglian and the others could as well. In the past, so many people from the Mahakala temple had entered the lower realm. Even if they were all elites, not everyone was a heaven and earth mystic opening realm powerhouse. When they approached the passage, they were directly sucked into it. When they reappeared, they were back in the cave. Lu Jianghe let out a long breath and said, "This place is simply a paradise." Even when the sacred church was at its peak and the formation was fully activated, the heaven-earth yuan qi that was drawn in was not as dense as this place. Lu Fengxian and the others were also shocked. The density of the heaven-earth yuan qi in the Dalu Ocean was indeed beyond imagination. They were shocked for a long time before they got used to it. Lu Jianghe said excitedly, "Let's go. Let's see what the Kangwu County that you control looks like." Chu Xiu said, "What's the hurry? Remember a few things. Change your accent so that you don't arouse suspicion." On the way, Chu Xiu had already told them about the difference between the Dalu Ocean and the lower realm's accents. They just needed to be careful not to let the cat out of the bag. Also, you have to have an identity when you go to Kangwu County with me. Otherwise, how can you introduce yourself to others? Mei Qinglian hugged Mu Zi and smiled. "That's easy, little sister Mu, and I will be your maids. Isn't it normal for the ancient sovereign's successor to have two maids at your side? Young Master Chu." Mu Zi wanted to break free from Mei Qinglian with an awkward look, but she failed. She had just reached the real pellet state, and her strength was much worse than Mei Qinglian's. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Lu Fengxian and said, "Then Brother Lu, you will pretend to be another Guzun descendant who is a good friend of mine." LV Fengxian asked doubtfully, "What if someone asks about my inheritance?" Chu Xiu said, "The descendant of the ancient demon god Marquis Lu Wenhou. Is this background big enough?" Lu Fengxian smiled bitterly, "But I am the descendant of Marquis Lu Wenhou of the lower realm, not Dalu Ocean." Chu Xiu shrugged his shoulders and said, "Is there a difference? Anyway, you are the authentic descendant of Marquis Lu Wenhou. Your age, strength, and techniques are all there. The ancient demon god Marquis Lu Wenhou does exist. As for whether Marquis Lu Wenhou has a descendant or not, who knows if he has come to the Dalu Ocean? You are here, so you are the authentic descendant of Marquis Lu." In the beginning, Chu Xiu didn't dare to claim to be the descendant of any ancient powerhouse because he didn't know whether those ancient powerhouses had descendants or not, and he was afraid of being exposed. And Lu Fengxian was indeed the descendant of Marquis Lu Wenhou. There was no problem with him claiming so. Lu Jiang, he asked on the side. What about me? Whose descendant am I? You are an itinerant cultivator who was recruited by me. Chu Xiu glanced at him and said. Lu Jiang, he said unhappily. Why am I an itinerant cultivator? Chu Xiu said indifferently. Ancient venerables' descendants aren't as old as you, and they don't talk as much as you. Chu Wuji smiled bitterly and said, I know myself well. With my age and strength, I can also be an itinerant cultivator. After the discussion, the group walked out of the cave and headed for Kangwu County. Although Lu Jianghe and the others were curious, they only sized them up secretly. They didn't act like they had never seen the world before. The Black Luo tribe's warriors were still guarding the outer perimeter. Even Lu Jadeite was guarding this place personally. Seeing Chu Xiu come out with a group of people, Lu Jadeite was puzzled. She didn't know where Chu Xiu had found these experts. This place was obviously sealed off by the Black Luo tribe's people, so how did these people come in? However, she didn't ask. She was more scheming than Heijia. The Black Luo tribe only needed to listen to this divine emissary, and they would benefit from it. Therefore, Lu Jadeite only glanced at Mei Qinglian and the others, then respectfully bowed to Chu Xiu and said, Greetings, divine emissary. Mei Qinglian chuckled behind Chu Xiu and transmitted her voice. An exotic beauty? Although she's a little dark, her figure is not bad. When did young Master Chu change his taste? Chu Xiu transmitted his voice. Don't mess around. Her mental strength is not weak. Be careful not to be heard. Where's Heijia? Lu Jadeite said. He's discussing the distribution of territory with the tribes in the depths of the Dilua mountain range. The tribes in the depths of the Dilua mountain range aren't weak. Although they worship the evil god, our Black Luo tribe can't do anything to them for now. We can only reach a temporary settlement. Chu Xiu nodded and said, That's good. When Heijia comes back, you don't need to do anything. I have something for you to do. Lu Jadeite nodded and said, As you command, divine emissary. Lu Jianghe and the others clicked their tongues in wonder as they watched from the sidelines. Just what kind of trick did Chu Xiu use to make these barbarians from the celestial of absolute heaven run circles around him, and make them act so respectfully and submissively? There were barbarians in the lower world, but compared to the Daluotian barbarians, the barbarians in the lower world weren't too different from the barbarians in the central plains. Moreover, their strength wasn't as strong as the Daluotian, so they didn't have much of a presence. The barbarians in the southern barbarian land actually listened to the words of the Subodhi monastery the most. However, that was because the monastery had suppressed the southern barbarian land for tens of thousands of years. Moreover, Rama and the other abbot had also spread the Dharma there. Under the subtle influence, the barbarians in the southern barbarian land submitted to them. Any monk from the Subodhi monastery who came to the southern barbarian land would treat them with respect. However, Chu Xiu had only been in the Daluotian land for a few days. It was not easy for him to do this. Su Fengshan and the others came out to greet him when they returned to the governor's mansion in Kangwu County. However, he was stunned when he saw Lu Fengxian and the others. Why did he bring back so many people after going out for such a long time? Chu Xiu pointed at Mei Qinglian Muzi and the others and said, They are my maidservants. This is brother Lu Fengxian, a descendant of the ancient fiend celestial Marquis Lu Wenhou, and he is my good friend. As for these two, they are the itinerant cultivators that I recruited. Lu Jianghe and Chu Wuji are guests in Kangwu County. Kangwu County is a little too weak now. It's hopeless to count on the headquarters of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, so we can only think of a way ourselves. Su Fengshan nodded and didn't suspect anything. It was normal for a Guzun's successor to have two maidservants by his side. Not every Guzun's successor was an ascetic cultivator. Based on Lu Fengxian's age and realm, as well as Chu Xiu's acknowledgement, he was undoubtedly the Guzun's successor. As for the remaining two, Chu Wuji looked very normal, while Lu Jianghe looked fierce. He shook his head and looked around. He looked like an itinerant cultivator who had some strength, but was unruly. He was good material to be a thug. Chapter 1148. Su Fengshan wasn't a talkative person. Moreover, Chu Xiu's prestige in Kangwu County could be said to have reached its peak. It was even higher than the previous county governor of Kangwu County. At the very least, the previous county governor of Kangwu County wouldn't casually kill people. As for Chu Xiu, if you didn't listen to him, he would really dare to kill you. Did anything happen in Kangwu County recently? Did anything happen to the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Su Fengshan smiled bitterly. Yes, there are many things. The Lord had been gone for so many days. The county governor's manor was like a place where he could stay at any time. Although they had obtained great power, they would rather not have it than be so tiring. Oh, did something happen? Chu Xiu himself did not feel anything. He had only been gone for a little more than a month. How could the sky collapse? Su Fengshan said. Previously, when you killed Yi Tianqing, the Imperial Sky Pavilion didn't give Cold River City an explanation. That's why Cold River City deployed their troops at the border. The old pavilion master went to the Cold River City in person. No one knew what he said or did, but the Cold River City finally retreated. However, it was said that the old pavilion master's face was a bit gloomy. After he returned, he went into closed-door training. The pavilion master even sent a message saying that in the future, when doing things, he should endure it if he could and not be so impulsive. There's also the Lingluo County. After you killed Yi Tianqing, another ruler came, but he's even more troublesome than Yi Tianqing. His opponent was Yi Weikong's direct disciple, Ice God Monarch Qi Wuhan. This man's means were tough and ruthless, and his strength was outstanding. Yi Weikong trained him better than his own son. It was said that he was the next successor of the Lord of Cold River City. Recently, the trade caravans traveling between Kangwu County and Lingluo County are often intercepted and asked for offerings and whatnot. The trade caravans that directly belong to the Imperial Sky Pavilion are especially targeted. Furthermore, they are slowly encroaching on our Kangwu County's territory. Their attitude is extremely arrogant. Without you around, we wouldn't dare to clash with them. Before Chu Xiu could say anything, Lu Jiang he let out a weird laugh and said, Yo, someone is stirring up trouble? That's great, I'll crush them to death. At the same time, let this noble one have a taste. Su Fengshan looked at Lu Jianghe with a strange expression. Where did official Chu find this guest chamberlain? Why was he so unruly? You want to pinch the experts of Cold River City to death with your little strength? However, since Chu Xiu didn't say anything, Su Fengshan didn't say anything. Chu Xiu said lightly, Are they still at the border? Su Fengshan nodded and said, Always. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, All right, you don't have to worry about this matter anymore. Call the people, I'll handle it. The Kunlun devil cult in the lower realm was Chu Xiu's foundation, and the things he managed in the Dayu Ocean were also Chu Xiu's foundation. Without the territory of Kangwu County, how could he guarantee the safety of the passage to the southern barbaric land? Without the territory of Kangwu County, how could he settle down the martial artists from the lower realm? If Cold River City wanted to stir up trouble, it wasn't the Imperial Sky Pavilion's interests that were at stake, but Chu Xiu's interests. At this moment, in a city at the border between Lingluo County and Kangwu County, the official road was already filled with guard checkpoints, intercepting the traveling merchants. A middle-aged man dressed in ice blue armor sat on top of the city wall, with his eyes closed. His posture had never changed, and he was like a statue. Beside him, a martial artist from Cold River City said cautiously, My lord, why don't we withdraw our people? The city lord has already said that the Imperial Sky Pavilion can't hold on for much longer. There's no need to force the Imperial Sky Pavilion to take desperate measures at this time. There's no need to compete with Chu Xiu at this time. This martial artist from Cold River City was the martial artist who had followed Yi Tianqing in the past. He had seen how terrifying Chu Xiu was, so he didn't want to go head-on with Chu Xiu at this time. Qi Wuhan didn't open his eyes. He only said indifferently, No matter how weak the Imperial Sky Pavilion is, it won't become a dead dog. When the time comes, we will still make a move. Yi Tianqing was careless. He dared to make a move without any information about the other party. When he fought head-on, he was killed. His death was worthless. Foolish. Since this Chu Xiu is determined to work for the Imperial Sky Pavilion, he will definitely be a great enemy of Cold River City in the future. If we find out some information about him now, we will be more confident when we make a move in the future. However, it's already been more than a month. I've been pressuring him step by step, but Chu Xiu still hasn't reacted. He didn't even send someone to question me. This can't be called forbearance, but cowardice. Are you sure this is the person who put on such an overbearing attitude and killed Yi Tianqing? Before the warrior from Cold River City could say anything, Qi Wuhan suddenly sat up and looked into the distance on the road. Although he hadn't seen anyone yet, he could feel that the other party's aura was very, very strong. At the border, Su Fengshan, Shen Hui, and the others followed behind Chu Xiu helplessly. In fact, they didn't want to come. They even wanted to persuade Chu Xiu not to come. They weren't really afraid of death. They were afraid that Chu Xiu would kill Qi Wuhan or make a big deal out of it. After witnessing the scene where Chu Xiu killed Moriha and Yi Tianqing, Su Fengshan and the others were very confident in Chu Xiu's combat power. They were even a little blind. As long as he didn't encounter an expert in the martial immortal realm, they even thought that Chu Xiu could fight anyone. However, the problem was that although it was easy to kill, there were endless troubles after killing someone. Previously, when Chu Xiu killed Yi Tianqing, the Imperial Sky Pavilion had to pay a huge price to suppress the matter. Yet, Chu Xiu was still prepared to make a move. If he killed Qi Wuhan again, the Imperial Sky Pavilion probably wouldn't dare to keep such a troublemaking guest anymore. Lu Jianghe pursed his lips and thought to himself, what a bunch of cowards. Previously in the lower realm, Chu Xiu had already told him the general situation and distribution of the Daluotian's forces. On the way back, Chu Xiu told them about the Imperial Sky Pavilion and Cold River City. After listening to Chu Xiu, Lu Jianghe was very disdainful of the Imperial Sky Pavilion's actions. They were a great sect that had been passed down for 10,000 years. In the end, they didn't inherit the might of their ancestors. Instead, they developed a forbearing attitude. They didn't even dare to fight against a rising force, and could only retreat again and again. If they weren't cowards, what were they? Standing on the city tower, Qi Wuhan looked down at Chu Xiu, who was at a disadvantage. His expression did not change as he said, "You're Chu Xiu who killed Yi Tianqing?" As expected of the descendants of Gu Zun, each and every one of them is an outstanding person. Chu Xiu said calmly, Cold River City's City Lord Ye's direct disciple, and the future successor of Cold River City. Yet you're so childish. You're acting like a child in a fit of pique. Cold River City is prepared to let this matter go. This proves that Cold River City won't go to war with the Imperial Sky Pavilion now. Since that's the case, is it interesting for you to make things difficult for both parties here? Qi Wuhan shook his head and said, to be honest, it's very boring. Hit the snake where it hurts. Naturally, it's more straightforward to kill someone. If I were in Master's position, Cold River City and the Imperial Sky Pavilion would be at war now. The expressions of the people behind Qi Wuhan changed slightly. In the entire Cold River City, Qi Wuhan was probably the only person who dared to question Yi Weikong's orders. However, this was normal. Qi Wuhan was the successor of Cold River City, not a puppet who only knew how to say yes. If he didn't even have his own ideas and opinions, he wouldn't be the successor. Qi Wuhan looked back at the people around him and said calmly, but I'm not Master after all, so I can only do as Master asks. I won't touch your Imperial Sky Pavilion for the time being. However, you killed Yi Tianqing too quickly. Yi Tianqing deserved to die, and his death was meaningless. Now that I'm in charge of Lingluo County, if I don't get some interest back, how can people feel? Although it's childish, it's fine as long as it works. You said that I'm acting in a fit of pique, but in fact, I'm acting in a fit of pique. In life, even if you don't fight for something, you still have to fight for it. It took Cold River City hundreds of years to reach the position that you top sects spent 10,000 years to reach. If I don't fight for it, how can I do it? Chu Xiu, the decline of the Imperial Sky Pavilion is inevitable. You can't stop it. You won't be the county governor of Kangwu County forever. Today, I'll give you a chance. Move the border between the two counties back and assign Nan and Prefecture to Lingluo County. I'll ask people to remove all the checkpoints, and both sides will be at peace from now on. Lu Jianghe looked at Qi Wuhan in surprise. This guy was a great figure. Even in the human world, he was an expert who could support a top sect. At this moment, Su Fengshan and the others wished that Chu Xiu could agree to it. It was undoubtedly a good deal to use Nan'an Prefecture, which was useless and had been abandoned by them, in exchange for the retreat of the people of Cold River City. However, although it was a good deal for the Imperial Sky Pavilion, it was not a good deal for Chu Xiu. Nan'an Prefecture was close to the land of South China. It was something that he had to control and could not give up. Looking up at Qi Wuhan, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "What if I don't want to give up Nan'an Prefecture?" Qi Wuhan frowned slightly. Was Chu Xiu's character so unyielding? He shouldn't have threatened him to the bottom line. He was unwilling to make such a small concession? Since you're not willing to let Cold River City vent this anger, I can only fight for it myself. Anyway, I've been used to fighting for so many years. Chu Xiu moved his neck, clenched the scabbard in his hand, and said in a deep voice, "It's just as well. I'm not used to raising my head to talk to others." As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the scabbard was unsheathed, and the sharpness of the saber intent distorted the void. The powerful sharpness seemed to want to tear the world apart. After the formation breaking and listening to spring rain were integrated, the sharpness of the saber intent increased greatly. Not only did it have the effect of returning all the power, but it also had the effect of tearing the power of rules. When the two kinds of power were superimposed, there were not many people in the same realm who could withstand this saber, even if they were in the mysterious Enlightenment realm. Lu Jianghe winked at Lu Fengxian and the others and said, "Don't be idle. Let's attack together and see how strong these Daoyuotian martial artists are." You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.